Overcast. Day for Night Podcast. 030 Dictaphone.
The human brain is a pretty amazing thing. It makes us do things we didn't want to do. It allows us to feel things we never thought we'd feel. It helps us achieve amazing things. It takes us to the darkest places imaginable. It helps us create the most incredible situations. It brings us tremendous joy. It brings us tremendous sadness. It allows us to experience the happiest of times and the darkest of situations. It brings us together and it tears us apart. It allows us to express just how much control we can achieve. And it shows us just how out of control we can become. The human brain. Without it, we are powerless. With it, we are at its mercy. The human brain.
Well, here we are at the Dreifuss station here in Pimlico, along the Talk About It network. As you can tell from where I'm standing, it sounds like a little bit of activity going on. Maybe we should go inside and just take a look. Come on. Mind the pedestrians. Careful, the escalators here. This is the Day for Night Talk About It podcast. And what I've come to the conclusion is that every time I start talk about it, a train goes by. Which is sort of appropriately linked to Talk About It. How we're presenting our journey from ignorance to awareness. This is a website that's meant to present subject in a much more engaging and user-friendly way, and our choice to go down a very iconic and abstract route was the brainchild of Greg Grunberg to suggest that we not be conventional, that we do absolutely nothing in the way that it had been done before, and that we really think outside the box. Right now, this is countdown approaching the 0 hour for the launch of the site. We're actually making the various platforms right now. It's been really quite an amazing creative journey, and the purpose of this podcast is really to present a document of some of the various steps along the way getting us to this finished product. And I wanted to be able to talk about it in the way I sort of work on things, sort of gently foam and run off the mouth. Well, looks like our train's here, and on time.
Mind the doors, thank you.
All right, let's get on this. Don't know where I'm going. I do know where I'm going. Come on. Have a seat right here. Sorry. Excuse us. So, talkaboutit.org is a website created by Greg Grunberg, who's a star on NBC's show Heroes, and worked in collaboration with the Epilepsy Foundation, Ken Lowenberg and team. Talkaboutit.org unites Hollywood stars and celebrities to ask the questions and to provide answers on epilepsy awareness and invite change in the public's false understanding and perceptions about epilepsy. And it was probably at the first meeting for Talk About It that we realized we're not going to build an ordinary website because the cause is so remarkable, and getting people to talk about epilepsy, a subject that most people haven't been previously comfortable with discussing, is something of an undertaking, because you first have to help people get past that and sort of make a giant leap by getting them to a new place where they feel slightly disoriented, maybe, even a little intrigued, and can let go of that stigma. They can then begin to move past that and to talk about it. We knew that that was going to be the main goal, to not create a nuts and bolts kind of website. So many of those already exist. Something very sterile or very clinical just wouldn't do. It had to be remarkable enough that the website was something that people would talk about. So that was our undertaking. We had, of course, a lot of that on our plate at the very beginning, knowing all this. And we made talk about it deliberately a little bit mysterious and obscure at first, because we knew that any attempts to lead people to a site explicitly and solely about epilepsy would probably reject most users. That if you couldn't get the star power factor across, as many Hollywood celebrities as possible all talking about epilepsy, unless you could at least attract people to a site that had this many stars on it, and then let them know that the subject of the day is epilepsy, then no one would show up. And that's not a statement about the worthiness of epilepsy as a cause. Quite the contrary, it's an incredibly deserving cause because it has so little previously done by way of drawing and attracting attention to it. And the simplest and the best way to get people comfortable with the condition is to get people to start talking openly about it, to understand what it is, to not feel like it's this thing you have to back away from. When people are subject to a tonic-clonic seizure and are on the ground shaking, most people don't come to their aid, they back away. They're backing away from an unexploded bomb. And that's a kind of old school behavior that needs to come to an end. You have to ask yourself, what can we do together to change that? And the biggest thing we knew we had to do was just get people to not be scared of it. To do that, you have to represent the thing as a journey, because you're leaving an old mindset and going to a brand new one. You have to meet people currently where they're at and then guide them away from ignorance to awareness. You can't just tell them, oh, you're an idiot for not getting this already, because people quite literally wouldn't relate to it. If they didn't already know someone who had a condition, they wouldn't probably, first of all, even understand why this is important yet. And also, they wouldn't come to the site with a very open mind. They'd come bringing their baggage. And most people have seen a tonic-clonic seizure at some point. They've been in school. I remember my first day in junior high school, and a kid who I actually grew up with in elementary school. It was our first day in junior high, and in the middle of the playground, he suddenly had a tonic-clonic seizure. I had known him for 6 years and I'd never seen evidence of it, and then on the first day of junior high, it was just such a shock to be in junior high. And then it was an even bigger shock to see my friend go into seizure. So I had a very painful reaction, I think, to seeing that, because it was sort of, did this bring it on? Did junior high bring this on? I know it's a big jump, and we're all going to be, kicked senseless by bullies for the next 3 years until, for at least for the first year. And now suddenly the first one of us is down. It was kind of a scary impact to just come to a brand new school and have this happen. So I remember I had my earliest reaction was sort of seeing it and going, oh my gosh. To aware. But you can't scold people for that reaction either, because it's just been a grossly misunderstood subject for many years. It was lumped in with possession and things. For the Middle Ages, people actually believed that an epileptic seizure was somehow a condition of a person being possessed by the devil. So when I was drawn to this project, it was because Greg Grunberg approached me about 3 years ago, saying that his eldest son, Jake, had been diagnosed with epilepsy, and he needed a web designer as quickly as possible to put together a website for the Pediatric Epilepsy Project at UCLA, and would I be willing or able to do it? And at the time, I was just so absolutely swamped and overloaded that I was unable to make the contribution that I would very much have liked to have made. I had just taken on my 4th contract that month, and realized at the exact moment that I had accepted this contract that I wouldn't be able to take on any additional work. I would have to say no to almost anything else that came in for the next month and a half to 2 months, because it just would be too much. There'd be no way I could do any more. And that evening, I got an email from Greg asking me if I could do the pediatric epilepsy website. And it was with great heaviness in my heart, great dismay, that my sad response, considered response, because I didn't reply immediately, but I think around midnight I just wrote him an email saying, I'm really sorry, Greg, I'll do anything I can to support you, but I can't promise that I'll be available to do this project much as I would love to, because I've just gotten too swamped. And I sent that email just with such a heaviness in my heart about it, and it was years, really, again, before we talked about that. I didn't forget. I don't think a day went by afterwards that I actually ever forgot that I had to turn down his project, because I thought this cause is actually better than projects that I'm currently going to be working on. It's just the timing. You know, it always works out that you say yes to something and it happens. You say yes to something else that happens. You say yes to a third thing and that happens, and then the real prize comes through the door, and you have to say no. I've already said yes 3 times to other things, and they are actually happening. So, external circumstances aside, I had written Greg an email earlier in 2008, it was in, I think, May, reminding him how much I would love to help him at all with his work for the epilepsy cause. And I knew how much he was doing because of Band for TV and his other side projects, and additionally I just been kind of a fly on the wall watching everything he was doing, just with great respect and admiration for his commitment to it, that I just decided to send him an email, like a message in a bottle. Just send this email out to him saying, look, I really would love to help you. If you've ever got another project for epilepsy awareness that you ever want to do, please just know that my door is open. You know, you can call anytime. Just know that you can count on me. I really didn't ever want to turn you down in the first place, and it was bad timing, but I would make you a priority if you came to me now with anything that you're doing. Please just know you can call. So I sent that, because it sounds deeply pathetic, but I sent that email basically just because I had to cure this weight in my heart to at least convey how much I really wanted to help him. And I sent that just knowing that it may never turn into anything. So I just sent it with at least a sense of peace about it. And then about 2 months later, I got an email from Greg saying, guess what? I have a project for you, and I think this is perfect for you. And he really was right. Oh, Empower, that's our stop. All right. Gotta get out. Excuse me? Excuse me, I'm sorry. Thank you. Sorry. Because it was the ideal mixture of my creative contribution to the best projects I've ever done. It was really an important opportunity. I knew that I needed to have a hand in making something that mattered again, from the standpoint of contributing good design. I really needed to contribute good design to a project like this one. So it was just beautiful timing, really, because somehow I think my aerial went up in May, but I didn't actually know about talkaboutit.org until Greg contacted me and called me in July to talk about that. We really had the best conversation about what it could be and what it was meant to do. Frankly, it was the most exciting idea I had heard in months, probably in years, because his enthusiasm rivaled mine with the kind of work you can do to get people to take notice of things that are important. And viral marketing was going to be such a huge part of what we would do to execute this, that I knew there would be a role for me, at least at that level, to invent and contribute. So I wanted to be able to make a great site for Greg, not just because he was my friend, but because he had finally brought to me a project that I could say honestly had tremendous relevance, was really, really personally important to him, and therefore personally important to me as well. And it really worked out nicely that way too. dollar when you need one. Personally important to me as well. And therefore personally important to me as well, which was to be allowed to rationalize and create something that makes perfect sense on both an intuitive level as well as on an execution level, to be allowed to finesse it to a degree that I would feel comfortable to share it with people, not just something that's sold short by being rushed out of the gate as quickly as possible on a skin-tight hairline budget. Do you mind? We're doing a podcast? Yeah. Well, what you're hearing now is the music that was being made during months leading up to just right before design work began, talkabout.org. And I was pretty fanatical at that point about working in all media to start the ball rolling. And a sort of voice in the back of my head said that working in music would probably not be a bad idea, even though I'm only being asked to do some basic design. I just could see how it would spill out into all other areas: painting, drawing, music, poetry, photography. I just didn't have a sort of cap on where I should start or stop. So I decided to just spend the moments in the month leading up to the sort of the design focus just working on new tracks. One of the benefits of sort of working really fast, I like to work in Sound Edit 16 still. I launch OS 9 on one of my older G4 workstations just so I can use Sound Edit, because I can pretty much do a track in about 40 seconds. It's just under a minute. You can just make something really, really fast. And I was really working at a blinding speed, making loads and loads of tracks around that time. Many of them were just works in progress. I would come with about 8 to 16 bars of music, and after about maybe 20 minutes of tweaking it and refining it, then I would just shelve it and say, that's it, next one. And that was the MO for about a month, just sort of leading up to the beginning of the actual work. I engaged Brian Peterson, who was my fellow designer on so many projects, to start discussing this and talking about what we could do with this. And we had all sorts of ideas. At that stage, I was completely overwhelmed with the design ideas of so many possible approaches that not one of them seemed to be authoritative or definitively the approach yet. And so I did what I sort of do best under those circumstances. I just began collecting images and a set of scans and images that just felt like the website should feel. So I basically just went to my scanner, sat down with magazine pages and pages from other things, articles, just mostly for visual direction, trying to find something that felt like this sort of source art, this inspiration. I collected about 100, 110 images here that were all just meant to evoke what Talk About It could feel like. And I realized I was very satisfied with the collection of images I'd chosen. Things that sort of just looked like they were handmade. Hands holding pictures of things that were sort of cut out or manufactured and made by hand. Things that were processed directly by hand. And also things that were very, very rich with colors. I actually had this color bar that went through the original design, sort of a muted medium 60% gray as a background, but then everything else was this bursting life of color that came out. So I began to collect things, just cut things out and clip things that were, piecemeal and hodgepodge. It just felt like a massive everything book. If you look through the folder that I collected, you start to see a recurring theme. A lot of detail, lots of color, and a much larger background hue that was more uniform and kind of neutral. Even doing that sort of rotoscoped, posterized approach that was taken to the Obama image of hope, just applying that to some photographs and making things look very, very eclectic, very sort of traced. One generation from the actual reality was the idea. One generation from the actual reality was the idea. One generation from the actual reality was the idea. There was this sort of comic book approach as well, which translated into these seizure information cards that look like the cards that you see in the backs of, the seat backs in a plane that cover passenger safety information. And the way those sort of translate into comic book panels in a passenger card really sort of worked also for me as a comic book approach for the website, to have an actual comic book about a character who has epilepsy and maybe told from his perspective. So that was really important too, just feeling the pressure to sort of make it relatable at many different levels and not just one thing over and over. But ultimately that never got used. We didn't go there. We talked about this. I know on more than one occasion, as I almost always do, I was attracted to the work of Chris Ware, who does the Jimmy Corrigan series and so many other things, Quimby the Mouse, and the Big Tex comics. And I just loved the idea of these cross-sections that are cut away, showing how something works, cutting through or slicing through a diagram in a way to sort of either show on an alternate timeline events that are taking place, and that's something that came up many times, grabbing just that sort of image over and over again. I noticed that Wired magazine was the source of a lot of great visual inspiration because of their infographics style, and I thought that maybe a site that needs to have a lot of detail on a subject like epilepsy could often break away in the sort of non-linear way into the sort of infographics format. So I really found myself studying the information graphics from a magazine like Wired, and noticing just powerful images that were grabbing, mostly because of their use of color and shapes. Design annuals for things that won great design awards, and anything travel related. Of course, the most important thing seemed to grab me, as it does always, was anything that relates to the commodity of travel and how people get from place to place today, whether it's on the internet or whether it's through actual physical journeys by plane or by train or automobile. You get this sense of barcodes and tickets and plane tickets and things that have to be checked in, passenger check-in via online systems. Finally, there was this one thing that sort of grabbed me, and it was a balloon. And I knew that to talk about it made perfect sense if it was a speech balloon, and that was one thing that Brian and I agreed on 100% as we looked at various things together. Talk about it being inside of a speech balloon was really a very natural choice. And then I found this image, and it looked like a speech balloon that had been made by someone using paper mache. It was just something actually assembled by hand, and I loved the idea of this. Just something in 3D that you couldn't just simply buy out of a store, but it had been made by someone. And I started to envision just all the various ways that you could do something like this with Talk About It. It could be cutouts, it could be any form of mixed media would really apply, whether it was a painting or claymation or Legos or using paper mache, balsa wood sticks and blocks and things, and wanting to just cut everything out and recreate the Talk About It logo over and over through different media. But then not just make it into a still image, but actually animate the process of rebuilding the logo through various forms of mixed media. And that was a really important place to land with the project. And as I've noticed, every time I mention Talk About It, a train goes by.